Welcome to the Sanctuary Podcast, hosted by Angel Deer. In this podcast, we explore the mysteries of spirituality and consciousness. In each episode, we dive deep into the realms of human experiences, our rapidly changing world, and the unseen realms, tapping into the universal wisdom that connects us all. Whether you're a seasoned spiritual seeker, starting to awaken to the possibilities of a more expansive reality, or want support on your journey, this podcast is for you. Join me as we explore topics such as shamanism, spiritual transformation, holistic healing, the medicine path, energy healing, plant medicine, ancient wisdom, and more. Our guests are respected elders and experts in their fields, and we'll learn from their insights and experiences as we journey together on the path of spiritual growth. If you can, please consider supporting this podcast by joining our Patreon page at patreon.com/thesanctuaryny. Once again, it is patreon.com/thesanctuaryny. Now, let's dive into today's episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reimagine Embodied Leadership Summit. My name is Phoebe Leona. I am your host, and today we will have a guest, Angel Deer, who is a mystic, a medicine man, a teacher, a permaculturist, a beekeeper, an international speaker, and a lover of all forms of life. And he has a really interesting background. He was a veterinarian. You'll get to learn pretty right much off the bat, but he was also a CEO of actually, I think, 2 companies back in the day. And he really shares his journey about this journey of transformation that really brought him back to home, to who he has always been, connecting to nature and the mystical world, but how he, as he shares in a little bit, how he went on a different path for a little while, living in New York City as a CEO, and really just what was stirring up inside of him, which I think a lot of people who, if you've been experiencing during the pandemic, questioning your own role that you're playing in your job, is maybe even as a leader, kind of questioning your own values or being in alignment with the values of the mission that you're a part of, the corporation or product or service that you're aligned with. He brings in his own personal experience and gives some words of wisdom to you if you are in a bit of that space. We also explored some conversations around embodiment in terms of, how do you deal with these challenging emotions that come up when you are in these spaces, specifically polarized spaces of pointing the finger at other, and how do you actually bring people together and share these conversations that are open spaces that are safe in a way that there is transformation to occur. And that doesn't always mean that it's, as he says, sugar-coated safety, right? There might be places that trigger you, that feel uncomfortable, but being able to give you tools so that you can utilize those spaces that are uncomfortable for transformation to occur. So I really love this conversation that we have around leadership, in kind of going into those places that are uncomfortable that you might be facing, and how to, the theme that just continued to come through as we were talking was how to hold yourself accountable. How do you really show up every day for yourself and do this inquiry and go on these personal quests? And when you go on those personal quests and you find that you're even becoming more and more misaligned with whatever it is that you're doing in terms of your job or your leadership role, how do you face that, right? So love the conversation. I hope you do too. And now let's go ahead and share some time with Angel Deer. All right. Hello. I'm so happy to have you here, Angel Deer. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I also know you as another name, and that's sort of where I'd love to start with today, because I didn't know you as Guillaume, but we have a dear friend in common, and she's told me about you for so many years of just, oh, you're this human being that I should know because, we walk similar paths now. but also she saw you in this sort of before this transformation of who you are now as this leader, a very Western leader, a CEO. And now, I'd love to know, well, a little bit about that old version of you. And then maybe we can go explore what's an awakened leader for you. What's an awakened leadership and passion with purpose and your spiritual advisory board. But we'll get to those and we'll dig into those in a little bit. But yeah, let's start with where you are now and then go back to that time.
So do you want me to start when my old life was happening, I guess?
Whatever feels organic to you.
Well, I'm coming from Corsica. It's a small island in the Mediterranean, and there are mountain people. So despite it's in the ocean, in the Mediterranean Sea, we live in those small villages in the mountain, and beautiful pine forests and rivers, and the warmth of the Mediterranean, but also the difficulty of living in the mountain. Mountains can be pretty intense, right? Mm-hmm. And I've always felt very connected to that land. It's something that's always been present for me. And why I'm mentioning that, because I feel that somehow it's not like I'm a different person today than I was at the time. I just think maybe I lost a little bit my way along. I got into the bushes and distracted. I don't think I even like the term lost, because I think, to find ourselves, we need to get lost at some point, right? We need to kind of leave what we know and then see what works for us or not. But I feel like very much who I am today, which is working as this person that offers traditional healing and ancient wisdom, is very much what's so present, not only in my upbringing and my land, where I'm coming from, but also my ancestors and my lineage. So I've kind of reclaiming parts of myself that were hidden or blurred by my corporate career. As you mentioned, I spent over, I think, 15 years in the corporate world. First, I went to a vet school. So I graduated as a veterinarian, as a doctor for animals.
Yeah. I didn't know that part about you. I saw that in your bio and I was like, oh, wait, I did not know this. Where was that in his history? Yeah.
Yeah, I specialize in, emergency and obstetrics for large animals, for farm animals. So I was a surgeon in emergency, C-sections and things like that. I really enjoy that. And I think there was already there, this connection to the natural world, to the animal. When you're a vet for farm animals, you spend most of your time in the countryside and spend nights, walking with animals under the stars. And so there is this connection to nature that I really enjoyed and love, and people and animals. But then, I went into a corporate career, or a more, business-centered orientation as an entrepreneur and as a CEO of large corporation. And despite, I guess, I was successful there, I enjoy my personal development, I enjoy my team, I enjoy the product and the brands I work with, I soon realized that this was not my path, really. At least this was not where I wanted to be in 20 years, in 40 years from now. It was mainly lacking purpose. And I think as we transform individually, as finding our purpose, finding our passion, some set of values arise that maybe we didn't think were important at the beginning, or we didn't pay attention to. And then there can be a disconnect between our personal values and purpose and the corporation we work with.
Yeah.
So it was mainly a departure from that, but not a departure towards something else. At least not what I'm doing now, because when I changed, I didn't know what I was going to be doing. Okay. And it took probably 10 years of, going from point A to point B and transformation. And it's a transformation that's still going on, right? But there was not like, okay, I want to leave this world because I want to run a healing center. I want to, dive into shamanic wisdom and potentially teach them one day. I didn't see that coming, I would say.
Yeah. So can you go back to like a little bit of that time and space when you maybe didn't know, but you knew there was something else that wanted to be born within you? Like, what did that look like in terms of the role you were playing and like the struggles that were coming up and the patterns that maybe were coming up that you were participating in?
Well, I think the whole path of healing or spirituality is very much about consciousness, right? So becoming conscious of what we're not. I don't really like the term of awakening because, I think it's a little bit new agey and it's not properly used most of the time. But, we're all on the path of consciousness, right? Every human being is in the path of rediscovering who we are. And I think what comes with career success, which is money and maybe, recognition and all of that, for me was happening in the same time as I was diving down inward. So there was this outward curve of media and PR and exposure and, all the things that are attached to that. And at the same time, a realization that, there was a lot of things that I needed to heal, that I could not clearly feel that this outward success was going to be an answer to my inward success. In my case, right? For some people, it's different. But for me, there was definitely a split. And I think that split between the public image and the internal experience created a massive discomfort. And you can numb it, right? If you drink a lot of alcohol, if you're very social, if you also not look at your delusions, at your confusion, right? You might think your confusion is clarity, right? Well, this is how it is. We can justify, I think, what we do a lot by creating stories that we adore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And, we are very good at creating stories and narratives. I think humans need stories and narrative. And if the narrative answers to maybe our culture or our family or our colleagues, system that we are in, then we, might find, even as we become spiritual, which I'm not really sure what this means, but as we become conscious of who we are, we can find new narratives and keep going. But at some point to me, it was very clear that the system I was participating in were not the system I wanted to support.
Yeah.
It was not the type of world I wanted to really experience. So that was when the rift was very big, because there was an internal dread and pain and grief and anger. There was a lot of emotion there. Yeah. And there was a mask and a face, when you're a CEO and you run a company with hundreds of people, which was the case at the time, you need to put a good face, right? You cannot start saying you have doubt about the purpose of what we're really doing. Does it even matter? Yeah. Right? Does this company that I'm running in and the products we are selling, does it really matter? And so you can't really say that.
Yeah, you're leading.
But once you start seeing that, you can't unsee it, right? When you start having that experience. Yeah. True or not, people might say, well, I disagree with that. But for me, it was real, right? It was my inner experience. There was a necessity, as this quest to consciousness needs to bring you to more authenticity, I guess, alignment between the inside and the outside, to really depart and face the fear of, losing your salary and getting out of the system and the things that keeps us trapped, right? Yeah. And I had a narrative for many years. Well, until I get there, I'll stay, right? Until I make that amount of money, I stay. Until I save that amount of money, I stay. And I did that for a while, but then I realized this was not my path. This was just not what I wanted to experience. And so I left, right? Yeah. And I went on to, 3 or 4 years of quest of self, of meaning, and kind of emerged starting doing, I was a yoga teacher. I did a very long yoga training, studied the Advaita Vedanta, the ancient scriptures. So I was, dipping myself into ancient wisdom, Native American, South Native. And I start seeing in those teachings, in those elders, something that felt like, I can't even describe it because I still have that experience when I'm connected to those texts or those elders. I just feel I'm arrived when I'm there. I just feel so rich. I feel so much joy. Yeah. It's like drinking the most delicious honey, warm with milk and sugar and rose petal. For me, it's already a very deep inner experience of ecstasy when I met those things. And I was like, wow, I've never felt that before. It never felt that sweet. Not that the path of transformation is always very sweet. It can get very bitter. And, it's a very difficult path at the end of the day. I don't think it's an easy one. But there was definitely different questions than the one I had. And it felt those questions were broader and they were deeper and they were nourishing me in a way that I've never felt nourished in anything else I've experienced before in my life.
Yeah. Wow. So I definitely want to dig into that part of your transformation. But, when you were sharing this experience and these emotions that were coming up, when you were realizing this isn't fulfilling me anymore, I couldn't help but think of, what a lot of people are going through right now because of the pandemic. And we have the quiet quitting and the great resignation. And I'm just wondering, is there any wisdom you want to pass on to these people who are still in these roles, who are questioning, do I continue this path as a CEO, or do I feel something stirring inside of me? How do I, still lead from this space? Do I stay there and try to shift the consciousness within that? Or do I just completely make the leap and do something as bold as you did? Is there anything kind of in retrospect, whether talking back to your old self or anybody listening, that could connect with that today?
Well, it's a really interesting question and one I've pondered for a long time and I still look at sometime because I don't want to, and I'm not demonizing the corporate world. Some people I think misunderstand that when I talk like that. Yeah. I think there is 3 components to it. There is us as an individual and as a person. And knowing what we are here for and what do we want to do in our life. How do we want to be? What do we want to create?
Yes.
What do we want to participate in? What do we want to spend our energies, which is our time, right? And what is this thing? And then you have the corporation, I think, as a product or as a service, and looking at that, okay, is this in alignment? In my case, I worked in the luxury industry and then in the baby industry. And so is this products I'm selling and what I'm selling, is this really aligned with my inner set of values and purpose and my mission? And then I think there's the organization itself instead of the people, in terms of how people relate and in terms of leaderships and how is the interaction, the way people relate. Not that it's going to be perfect anywhere, but is there an openness to maybe a different type of connection? I've worked and done consulting for, I'm thinking of one big foundation out there that's quite famous and does, I think, quite beautiful work in terms of their mission. But the management and the internal relations is a nightmare. There's a lot of bullying and it's very patriarchal and there's a lot of pressure and it's really bad, like the stories that are there, right? Yes. So, and then you have organization that maybe their mission doesn't seem as important, maybe, but where the CEOs and the management has a whole different way of relating, right? And then, in the spiritual world, you have people that just also are not good and not aligned, right? So it's not, it's people, right? Everywhere. And we are going to find the same people everywhere. But yeah, I think for people that are there, it's like, okay, first there is the inner quest. It has to start there because that's where it will end anyway. So we need to really question why we're doing things. Am I doing it really for me, or because I learned it's the way to do it, or because my parents expect that from me, or my wife, or whoever, right?
Yeah.
Is this aligned with a set of values that I'm doing? Is my company, doing things that I believe are really aligned with the world I want to see? And is the structure organized in a way that is going to allow me to develop my own personal transformation? I think that's what the corporation and in general organization, even nonprofit, have a very hard time to deal with, because if you allow personal transformation and inner inquiry, you might lose people because people might realize. So it's a very tender, difficult, but at the same time necessary work. I think that any organization needs to embark. So is that fitting? It's never going to be perfect, right? But we see usually very quickly when we start doing inner work where the misalignment is, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You said a lot of beautiful nuggets of wisdom. I really resonated. Thank you for pointing this out too, of, it's the people, and it's not even just the mission, but it's even in the spiritual community of these misalignments as well. And what you were just saying towards the end of, in terms of corporations or bigger organizations not always wanting to encourage the person to go on their own personal journey. And whatever that is, I don't know if you know, but I teach the military community. I bring yoga to the military community and teach them yoga teacher training. So I work with the cadets and other, officers in the military. And we have this conversation too of, how much can you go on this inner journey and then find, kind of be in alignment with your own personal values and purpose, and then also be in this position where you have to execute and not always feel in alignment with. And that is definitely a very big conversation that we have there. And I'm glad that you brought it into our space to just sit with too, because I think that has come up a lot, and it comes up even more when we talk about organizations and kind of our career, quote unquote, career paths, and going down it and saying, oh, this is no longer with my values. And now what? Right.
Yeah. And I think it's important to have that process and to stay aware of our relations to others, and to make sure we don't start to demonize the corporation, the organization, the leaders, or individuals, right? I don't think anybody's evil. Sometimes you say, oh, this person is evil on social media, or this person is like that, right? We are all multifaceted. We're all very complex, and we are all full of contradictions. Once we start digging a little bit, right? It's like, I was talking to a friend about it that buy all those, organic products and veggies and fruits and all that. And I was, mentioning to him that, what I buy is maybe not always organic, but it's from my local farmers, right? Because I know where it's planted, and I want a relationship with the land. And when I can, I don't always do that.
Yeah. And
that, in fact, a lot of organic product, they might look good because they might be better for the environment, but most of the time use slave laborers, use very underpaid people, have massive carbon footprint because it's shipped from all over the world. I was reading somewhere that a lot of the spinach, organic spinach we eat in America, is coming from China.
That's so interesting.
So it's like, there's no perfect choices, right? But I think it's important to question and to inquire, and then say, okay, is this aligned? And I think, like the work you do, I think with the Army, I think it's super important to be bridges, right? To not say, oh, Army's bad and this is good, because it's not the case. There's extraordinary people that have amazing hearts and take care of their family and really have a sense of duty and service in the Army that you don't find in other places, including the spiritual community, right?
Yeah.
I mean, being ready to give your life for a cause, we can debate about the cause, but wow. We can have respect for that, right? And I have a lot of respect for that. So I think it's very important to not like, finger point this organization or those products. But I think as a collective, we need to move together and towards a transformation. That's quite evident in the world of today. It just doesn't work. What it needs to be, we don't know, but what am I going to do about it? What is my role in it? How do I participate? What do I need to heal personally that is still fitting into something I don't really believe in?
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes there's no choice, or there's not an evident choice, and there is not an easy solutions, right?
Yeah.
I'm still driving a car that uses petroleum, while I am very conscious that all companies are definitely, not always acting really good for the land, for the people, for native lands, for the environment. So it's one of my things that I haven't reconciled yet.
Yeah.
Right. And also, I think a lot of people, are very low income or are very socially excluded from this conversation. Totally. And very often they have absolutely no choice in where to buy their food or to consume, where to work. So we cannot demonize even someone that needs to work at Walmart as a cashier, even if we say, okay, I don't like Walmart, for example, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she has to feed her family and her kids, right? So I have to be conscious of that. And how do we support that? How do we shift that? Yeah. And I don't have the answer, by the way, right? So let's be clear, everyone listening. And, I'm not saying, hey, go talk to me. No, but I think we need to question it. We need to open the conversation, and we need to be able to sit together around the table with our differences, without name calling and judging, and being able to have deep listening and understanding, because there's no other way around. We are going to do it together, all together, or we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
To me, that's pretty obvious today.
It's so obvious. Yeah. I feel like if you weren't aware of it before the last 3 years, you could not hide from it. There's just been so much polarity. And I love that you brought that into the conversation, because I feel what you just said, we have to sit together and be able to have these really challenging conversations in any environment, even if it's sitting at a table with your family at Thanksgiving, or sitting at your job, or, having these really heavy conversations or avoiding them. Right. So part of your journey, has been holding space for people. And I think that you work with a lot of different communities right now. Is that true? What do they look like? What does that look like for you?
Well, we run retreats in different parts of the world, right?
Yeah.
And a lot in Peru, but, we have one coming up in Mexico and other places. I work with elders that are from very different traditions. My main lineage is coming from Peru and from the Andes. And, that's kind of my second family. I spend, 3 to 4 months every year in Peru for the past 10 to 15 years. So, I have another set of friends and really close community there.
Yeah.
And then there's my local community here. I have a lot of people that comes from the city, but I have also all my local community.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've been also really questioning, in the past few years. And I think since COVID, because we couldn't move around, and that was amazing, could rest, right?
Yeah.
But also, I need to connect to that community. I need to be able to be in touch with, the people here. How are they living? What are the needs? Right. And I think that's more important to know about your neighbors than to know about community from the other side of the world. It's great to know what's going on there, but let's start with what's on our doorstep, right?
Yeah.
And Sullivan County, where I live, it's one of the poorest country in the country. I think, at the bottom 5 or bottom 10, right?
Okay.
So there is a lot of issues, right? And what is my role as someone that lives there in relation to those systemic issues? Because, it's easy to scream at the government or the corporation, but am I getting involved in the local organization? Am I getting involved in the local associations? What can I do as a human being in those spaces that would be of support, be of service?
Yeah. I appreciate you bringing that, because I feel like we did all go somewhat global because of the pandemic, and we were in our homes, on our computers, finding in a lot of beautiful ways, right, that we could connect with people around the world that were like-minded. And maybe if you were in your local community and did feel like you didn't belong, you now had this outlet to really connect. But I love how you were saying, but you also have to be with your physical local community too. And that really is part of the transformation that you're saying is, look at your neighbors and help them and see, where the issues, the systemic issues are. And what does that look like for you? Like on your daily basis of holding space in your local community?
Why it is, going to my local church on the Sunday and connect to the pastor that I really love and connect to the people that goes there that I'm not going to meet anywhere else. Unless I go there. It's being involved. We have a business association in the community of all the different type of businesses here and being involved with that organization. And also I've been thinking, I became American, 3 years ago, and now I can vote and I can be involved in that. And it's also, okay, if I don't like the politics, if I don't like how I'm represented, what am I going to do about it? Am I taking the steps that might be difficult, right, to be understanding this system really instead of just criticizing him and see how I can be part of that change on a more local level? And that's something that's been on my mind recently, right? How can I be involved more on the decision we take every day for a town, on waters, on lands, on people, on industries that can come around here, just all of it, and be, in those probably difficult spaces and conversation with people that have a very different view of the world than me. But then, not just being powerless by criticizing. Criticizing is very easy. Anybody can have an opinion. But I think unless you are at the forefront of it, you don't have an informed opinion. So we can criticize, the governments and the Democrats or the Republicans or this and that. But let's be involved, right?
Yeah.
And let's see how hard it is to change things, right? Let's be a witness of it. Yeah. And then have more compassion and kindness, I think, for the people that are in that position for probably their whole life, trying to change the system and understand that sometimes, they make decisions that seems crazy to us, but it's not black and white. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, what I just heard you say is basically holding yourself accountable first and asking myself, like, how am I showing up? And instead of pointing the finger at the other person, it's okay, let's bring it back to myself first. And sitting with those, because you also talked about this earlier in your world with being a CEO, of like the difficult emotions that come up when you are working with, we'll just call other for now. Are there some ways of how you deal with it? And I know you do probably a lot of shadow work with what you do as entering in as an elder. We were just talking about that before we press record. You're almost an elder.
My few gray hair, right? And some here.
Yeah. What are some of your own like personal practices when those darker emotions come into your space, and whether they're your own or with other?
Well, I think we need to learn to be with it. That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
And, I think in the world of today, everybody is such in a state of stress that the nervous system is dysregulated and people are either in a fight or in a flight or in a phone numbing process, right?
Yeah.
And we see that on social media, we see that on TV, we see that just everywhere, right? There is no true listening. Right? There's this amazing book from one of the native elders, I've been working with, and his book is about deep listening. And the title of the book is Stop Talking.
I like it.
Right? So we don't really know how to do that, because I think once we start slowing down, which kind of COVID forced us to do.
Yes.
Or when we go through burnout or things like that, when we are forced, our bodies just say no because they are exhausted. We have the opportunity potentially to feel what is really there. And sadly, in our world, there's a lot of medicine we can take to avoid feeling.
Yes.
Right. And most of them are very illegal, like alcohol, for example.
Yeah.
So I think it's really difficult to do that unless you have the tools.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel very blessed that in the past 15 years plus, I've learned from amazing people that there are tools that we can use that really works, that help us to sit with anger, with the discomfort, with rage, with grief, with confusion, with separation, with all those emotions that are difficult. Breath work, meditation, deep connection to nature. There are many things that I do that, even gardening. People often ask me when I don't feel well what I do. I say most of the time, I go out and I open the chicken run and I just sit in the garden with my chickens and I say, well, they're like, what? So, I'm just present with nature, with those animals and the nature around me. And very often, eagles or hawks fly above me and I just let myself be with it. I think it's very important not to try to change what we're experiencing because it is valid, right? Every emotion we experience, it's valid. And very often it comes from very early age, stuff that happened to us where we're powerless, where someone, took something from us we didn't want, and until we heal that, we're going to react to the world, in extreme ways. Sometimes or often disproportionate with what is happening. When I see the rage sometime on social media, because someone wrote something that someone disagree with, I'm mesmerized by it. Most people don't know the person that's writing it. In fact, just one writing, it doesn't mean it's the ultimate truth. Very often this is just a share, right? Yeah. I think we need to be able to own our strong emotions, to own our triggers, and to really be accountable for it and say, okay, what is really, and we can only do that if we pause. If I instantly react, I just basically can't see what's really happening. I need to really sit with it. And then maybe an hour later or a day later or a year later, I will see what it is really about. So we need that space. And in a world that's faster and faster and noisier, and we're inundated, there's so much information. I think we need to create those spaces for ourselves. Because even for me that lives in upstate New York in a smaller community and in nature, if I don't create that space, I'm going to experience that dread of anxiety and not really know why is it. Is it because I drank 2 coffees today? Or is it because something is really going on through my system that I need to attend to? So it's a commitment to self-inquiry. It's a commitment to self-discovery.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I know. I just heard this. I think it's this. I think the statistic is that the way that information is moving, it's doubling every 7 years. So how we're receiving information. And what you were just speaking to, and this is a lot of the work that I do too, is the somatic work of like our bodies are not prepared to move that fast.
Yeah.
And I love that you highlighted this idea of, again, coming back to this accountability, but holding yourself accountable for this inquiry, giving yourself that space. And, social media is an interesting tool because it's given people a place to have their voice seen and heard and felt, which can be empowering. But like what you just said, it also can be very negative and very toxic and creating these unsafe spaces that are disempowering. And I'm just wondering, in terms of the space that we're kind of sitting in right now, of like, are there, in an ideal world, what would a safe space look like where people can truly share their voices and feel seen and heard, but not in a way that it's going to be hurting somebody else or being received that is triggering these old wounds? Is it possible? Do you see that vision possible? Maybe not. I'm not sure.
Well, is it possible to not be triggered by someone saying something? No, it's impossible. We are going to get triggered. So I think the definition of safe space sometimes can be very sugar-coated, right?
True.
We're going to hold our truths. We're to be so mindful of every single word. We need to allow ourselves to fail.
Yeah.
We need to allow ourselves to sometime we said the wrong thing that we didn't mean, right? So there is process for reparation. There is process for listening. There's process for healing what happened, right? Also that are important. But if it's a space where everybody has to be careful of what, let's say, the 20 people in the room might feel about our own words, it's impossible.
Yeah.
I might even say something in this conversation that's going to trigger you, right? Or I'm sure someone listening might be already in a story about me, about who I am. But you don't know me. In fact, I hardly know myself. So how can anyone knows me?
That's 20 minutes.
It's a process, right? So I think we need to first recognize that everybody's doing their best in the moment. Even someone that is hurting us and says something that we feel already hurt by it, in their level of consciousness, in where they're at in this moment, unless people are intentionally harming someone, right? Intentionally saying something like a racist slur or something, right? But even them, I guess, they are doing their best in that moment. That's what they can do, right? That's what they know as truth.
Yeah.
So, but very often in those spaces, it's not intentional. Quite the opposite. People are coming for healing and listening. So I think what is safe then in that context is this a space where negative emotions are allowed? Is it a space where anger is allowed, where triggers are allowed? And what are the quality of the space or the space holders and the tools that we have to understand what's happening, to rekindle, repair, or mend what is happening? But we need to be super careful. I've been in many of those spaces and I work with people that kind of specialize in that. And very often there is a little bit of, despite it pretends to be absolutely not that, this very colonial capitalistic things about perfection. That the space has to be perfect and we have to be perfect. Yeah. It's almost like, a spiritual version of Catholicism. You've seen and here you're the saints. So we're kind of oscillating between the two. And we, there's name calling or there is, bad talks or gossips. And, I think, we don't allow true healing when that happens. In fact, I've witnessed it personally that it creates more harm than anything else.
Yeah.
We need to allow each other to fail. We need to know that we are going to be hurt by others in the same way we are going to hurt others. Right? Yeah. And we're never going to be perfect in this. So safety, it might be different. That's why people say, oh, what is a safe space? Or even safe people, right? Yeah, there is people that are safer than others. Yeah. But in terms of space and interaction, I think it's really relates to, are the tools in place? Do people have the capacity to process that? If you haven't dealt with your own personal anger, there's many things you're angry about since you're born. And someone triggers you, telling you this is going to be like a volcano coming out of you. Yeah. And the spiritual work might tell you, no, don't do it, tame it. And you might be able to do that, but it is not healing. It's not really true. So can be really safe, right? Even if you look really kind to me, but if internally you have this fire and you can't express it because you don't want to look bad, or to feel non-spiritual, or to feel like a bad person, I think that's more problematic.
Yeah, I completely resonate with that because I feel like when you start to walk on the eggshells and create this safe space, and there's a lot of spiritual bypassing in that, like not being able to welcome it, but almost what I'm hearing you say is creating some sort of container where you set boundaries so that people do feel that they can share, but also know that there might be things that come up that are uncomfortable. And here are the tools that we could utilize as a group or individually if those moments come up and arise. And that's where it feels like the transformation will occur in that moment, because you actually want that, right? You want to, for the transformation to occur, they need that heat. They need that.
Yeah. And we need the connection.
Yeah.
The running away
Yeah.
Constantly being in a situation where we keep living is never going to create healing. It might feel good and it might feel like the answer or truth, but in fact, my teacher told me a long time ago, he said, one day you are going to have to decide if you want to be right or if you want to connect.
Like it. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And doesn't mean I'm good at it, right? Sometimes I want to be right. Sometimes the little wounded little boy, doesn't want to be told that he's wrong, right? But I need to see that.
Yeah.
Right? I need to do my internal work and all of that. But sometimes we make a choice to okay, I'm hurt. I might have a bad feeling toward that person, but I'm not going to cut the bridges because I know what you and I desire ultimately is to connect. Mm-hmm. As human beings, the reason we're enraged with someone hurting us because there's a broken link. And in fact, what's under it is a deep unconditional love that is pushing us. If we didn't care at all, if we had no love for that person, even let's say for a leader that we despise, we would not care. We would not be angry because that would have no power. Why do we feel so connected? Because there is that connection under it and we can't deny it. And it's there. And until we know that's the truth, that's what we need to go towards. We are going to make decisions that are just going to create maybe a temporary feeling better. And sometimes there is necessity for that. I'm not advocating for no boundaries or getting out of certain spaces or contact, but I think we need to also, at the same time as we do that, acknowledge what is there for me, what do I need to do, and how to potentially, return. Mm-hmm. If that is possible. And that needs the two people involved in it, right? It's not just me or not just them, right? Sometimes it's not possible because not everyone is open to not being right and wanting to connect.
We have a lot of people who just want to be right. Yeah. But because
it hurts, right? When we feel like, oh my God, but what is it that someone tells me that I'm wrong? And what is it that's really painful there for me? Is it a little child? How old do I feel when someone tells me that? I'm already 49? Or I feel like I'm 12 and my mom is screaming at me. So I can, if I really know somatic feelings and I have tools for that, I can very often inquire, and forgive myself and be kind and attend to this little boy or little girl inside of me. Yeah.
And I think that it's so important what you said a little bit ago too, of just being able to recognize it, the connection versus the right. And what you were saying, I can't remember exactly what you said, but if it's not the connection, right? If there isn't that sort of sacred contract or something, that person might not even come on your radar. It's so interesting where you might be in situations like same situation with two different people, and one person there's like no connection, so it doesn't really matter, right? You don't even respond. But this other person, it's just like a dagger inside of you, and recognizing that, I think that's what I think is really interesting. And I think that's like a whole other topic to go down, but yeah.
There's a long discussion around that.
Yeah, that's a whole other discussion. But yeah, oh my gosh, I could talk to you for so long. I love it. And we hadn't spoken for probably a few years. So this was great. I'm so honored we did that. Can you share a little bit more about what you're doing in the world now? How I think you're sharing an ebook, correct?
Yes. So I have an ebook that I made many years ago, but somehow still very valid, which is morning practice. Okay. So I truly believe that the first things we do in the first 20 or 30 minutes when we wake up really set the tone for the day. Yes. It's not just me saying it. It's really my experience and the experience of people that do that. So I've developed, a set of tools that are, tools that are out there, but just put them in a frame together for people that are interested to start that process, or maybe you want to go deeper in that process, right? So there's 5 steps in it. And, some people might already meditate or might already do that, but might not do all of them. And I think they all bring something different. Yeah. And so I'm happy to share that with your community here.
I would love that. Thank you so much. We'll have that as this is being presented in the show notes so people can connect to it. And And yeah, I think I just value you and your journey. I just want to acknowledge that you've been on a beautiful journey, and I didn't know the first part of your journey. And it feels like you're coming back home. I know, in a very different location, but you are in a mountain. You are in the mountain.
I am in a mountain, yes.
So,
yes.
but it's been beautiful to witness you from afar, and now getting to know more about it and you. And it's very special to be able to share that and bring your wisdom into this conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Phoebe. Really a pleasure to be with you again today.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Sanctuary Podcast. We deeply value your support. Please consider sharing this podcast with others and joining our Patreon page at patreon.com/thesanctuaryny. Once again, it is patreon.com/thesanctuaryny. At The Sanctuary, we believe that spirituality is a personal journey that takes many forms, and we honor and respect all paths to awakening and the rise of consciousness. Our mission is to provide a platform for open and honest conversations about spirituality and to inspire and empower our listeners to live their most authentic lives in good relation to each other's, the living and invisible worlds. I look forward to connecting with you again here or at our events, retreats, and online gatherings. You can find all our offerings at thesanctuaryheal.com. Once again, it is thesanctuaryheal.com.